Hey guys, Blake Rodriguez with Dream Come True Canine, and on this episode of Blake's Takes, where we talk all things dog training in the pet dog world, we're going to be talking good manners and polite behavior. Can we really expect dogs to be polite if we never teach them manners in the first place? Now, I forgot how this topic came about, but I started thinking and I started noticing that there were some dogs that just happen to be good. You don't see it too often, but they're just not pushy around food. They're very respectful of space. They're not jumping up on people. They're not pulling on the leash. They're not barking when the doorbell rings. They just happen to be good off leash. And now some of you guys might have a dog that has maybe a couple of those, but not all of them. It's very rare where you just have a dog that happens to be well-mannered across the board. Now, I started thinking, well, if I want a dog to be well-mannered, and if a dog is pushy and rude, and a dog is being obnoxious, and a dog is barking at the doorbell, and a dog is pulling on leash, and a dog is doing all these inappropriate things, can we really expect them to be polite in everyday real-world situations when we've never taught them manners in the first place? Now, for me, what I started thinking about was growing up as a kid. Now, I'm not going to say that I grew up in a savage household. I definitely had manners. I knew how to say please and thank you. But I didn't know that you had to stick your pinky out anytime you drank tea. I didn't know, I mean, I guess I knew, but I didn't know that some people are very strict about elbows on the table when you're eating dinner. You know, and I also look at some kids that are brought up in rougher situations than I was, that come up in a household where it's just cursing 24/7 and they're able to you know, flick snot on the wall and do all these things. I don't know, I'm just sort of giving examples here. A lot of those kids don't know that they're being inappropriate or they're being rude, or if they say something in public because they're used to saying it around their family, but now they go somewhere and people are, oh, I can't believe you just said that. And he's like, what? That's how we talk in our household. The kid doesn't really know any better because those manners and those rules and well-mannered behavior and how to be proper was never really taught to him. So if you look at it from that point of view, I find a lot of dog owners are getting very frustrated with their dogs, expecting them to know these things, but yet not putting in the time and the effort to teach these things prior to when you need it. So it's going to be a really short episode, but the really short topic. The thing that I want to bring up that's super, super important is a lot of you guys are expecting too much. You're expecting your dog to not pull you on leash, but you never really taught it how to walk nicely. You're expecting your dog not to bark at the doorbell, but you never really taught it how. You're expecting the dog to not steal food off the countertop, but you never really taught it how. And understanding how to teach these things is really, really important. We're going to get into this in just a second. You've taught it how to sit, you've taught it how to lay down, you've taught it how to do all these things, but when something distracting is there, we haven't spent time deterring the dog from doing what it might be doing that's inappropriate. The reality is that many dogs are pushy. Many dogs are rude. Many dogs don't understand personal space and aren't respectful of other dog space and human space. And the reality is most dogs that have poor social skills with other dogs can be directly related to the social skills that we have with the human, or that is allowed with the human. Often, a lot of times, pushy behavior for affection, being pushy to get stuff, doing all of those things translates. And a dog goes, hey, this is how I communicate with my group. And what happens is maybe that dog hits it off in a dog park. Maybe that dog hits it off with another dog that is also equal, and they love it and they love it and they go 100% every time they see them. But all that dog knows is when it sees dogs and when it sees people it loves, how to be pushy. And then it starts to run into the wrong types of dogs. At the dog parks, the shy dog hates it and snaps at it all the time. The dog that likes to play but doesn't wants to kind of take a break has to snap at this dog. And these dogs are getting kicked out of daycare, or fights are starting with your dog, and you can't figure these things out. So really, really important is that if you want your dog to be well-mannered in all areas of your life, start holding them accountable for how pushy they might be and how respectful they are around space and around objects and around food. Now, this brings us to a really, really interesting topic that should segue into the next episode of Blake's Takes. And this topic is understanding what it is that you're trying to solve and what it is that you're trying to do when it comes to dog behavior. Now, what I mean by that is there are kind of two sides to the coin, and often people are leaving out one of them. And what I mean by this is, if you have a dog that is stealing things off of this coffee table here, you should spend time teaching it what it should be doing instead. 100%. Right? This is preferable. Make sure that's easy. Make sure they have no problem doing that instead. If that's an issue, get really good at that first. Teach a dog what is more desirable and try to build that habit. But when we have a dog that now knows how to do that, but is still making the mistake, the reality is you cannot reinforce the problem away. What reinforcement does is it increases the likelihood in the dog repeating the behavior. Now, you can reinforce a better choice and a better habit, but if you're not addressing the problem, you often might have a dog that knows how to make one choice and still can choose how to make the other choice if it feels like it. In order to deter a dog from doing something, you must punish it. Now, before you go, oh my gosh, I'd never punish my dog, understand what the scientific definition of what punishment is. This is very, very important. Punishment is anything that you do that will decrease the likelihood in the dog repeating the behavior. So technically, there is no way for you to stop, this is science, this behavior. There's no way for you to decrease the likelihood in the dog repeating this behavior unless you punish it. So there are two ways to punish. We can remove something that is pleasant, and in some situations that does work, or we can add something unpleasant. In a situation where a dog is running up and stealing food off of the coffee table, removing a treat in your hand that the dog is not interested in at the moment is not going to be an effective punishment because the dog doesn't want it. Right? And some people will say, well, you ask for a higher treat value, you do all these things. And in some situations in learning, beginning stages, that makes sense. But it's very unrealistic when what the dog wants is more important than what you have. This is a reality. You want to train in a way where you're more important. You want to train in a way where you are the biggest distraction and you are the most valuable thing to your dog, but you will not always be. Sometimes that might be temporary, right? So in situations like this, in order to punish, you have to add something unpleasant. Now, often what people will say is, in a situation where a dog is making a mistake, we're going to redirect them by simply giving them something more appropriate. So if the dog is taking things off the coffee table and chewing them up, we're going to give it something that it can chew on, right? Now, there is value to this. But if you are not aware of your timing, you can actually be reinforcing the very behavior that you're trying to fix. This is what I'm going to get into on the next episode of Blake's Takes.